meeting for March 4th, 2026. And I will call this meeting to order. All in favor? All in favor? Good afternoon, I'm Sharon Felton, and I will be chairing the Policy Review Committee today until such time as Ms. Weems is able to join the meeting. Ms. Weems is currently stuck behind the bridge coming from Chesapeake, and I told her to be safe. At this time, I will note that the school board members, Sharon Felton and Mark Bornstein, are present. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Wait a minute. There are no at all. Thank you. Do I have a motion to start?
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Bornstein. Second by myself. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The agenda is adopted. At this time, I will take a motion to approve the January 28th, 2026 meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mr. Bornstein, second by Sharon Felton. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The meeting, there are no nays. The meeting minutes are adopted. Is there any old business at this time?
The school administration is not aware of any, Mrs. Felton.
As acknowledged by Attorney Linetti, there are no old business at this time. At this time, we will take up new business with Attorney Linetti.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. Our first policy up today is policy 136, which is open and closed meetings. It's actually bylaw 136. Open meetings and closed meetings. This is sort of a longer policy, but we needed to update based on some changes in the law. So if you look through this, for the first change, is it showing up on camera? Okay. Okay, so I'm not seeing it on my thing. Hold on a second, I'm looking for where it changed. Oh, I'm sorry. We did review this. We had initially thought we were going to make changes, and after reviewing it, we did not need to make any changes to this policy. So this would be just simply our 5-year review.
So, Attorney Linetti, just for the public hearing, was there a request made to bring this forth? And the purpose of being brought forth, I see that it is up for. It was adopted in 2025.
No, I think we were. Oh, I'm sorry. Correction. This is not a 5-year review. We realized the law had changed. There were a number of the General Assembly is making tweaks to the Virginia Free Information Law. They now require an annual review of it. So we did look at it in 2025. We needed to look at it again. Based on what we had done in 2025, we did not feel that we needed to make any changes to this bylaw. But that is a newer requirement under the Virginia Free Information Act.
Okay, so, like you said, it's appropriate time to do this, and because the law is changing, so we just.
Right, certain laws the General Assembly is making us look at more often, like you saw last meeting with return exclusion has to be looked at every year. This is one of those laws, but because we had just amended it in August last year, we didn't feel like we needed to do it again this year. And I will say, we're not currently seeing anything in the General Assembly that is changing that, because they've been looking at the Free Information Act, they've been looking at the last couple of years. There's a possibility that something could change, but right now we don't anticipate having to change it.
Right, and the reason when I asked that question is I was curious because I saw it was amended August 12, 2025, and I know we try to stay up with those things as well. So that was my question for the purpose and appropriate time. Thank you, Attorney Linetti.
And under our checks, we are currently going back to the bylaws. As we explained, we do our annual review. Then once we complete our 5-year cycle, we start back again. The first one we usually start with are the bylaws. So we're now looking through the bylaws to check those that we need to update.
Great. That is interesting that the public know why we're doing these things and what make it possible that you have to, and there's different changes, and especially with the new administration. Thank you so much for the explanation.
So we would need a vote. Again, we're not recommending any changes. This would just be reviewed by the school board, and so we would need a vote to send it to the school board for the Yes, we just need a vote.
You have any all in favor sending this to the board?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Bornstein. Second by Sharon Felton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll send that on for the next policy review committee, information agenda. Our next one up is bylaw 137 again, because we're looking through the bylaw section. This is your annual organizational meeting. The last time we looked at this was September 28th of 2021. We are not recommending any changes at this time. So if the committee is happy with this, we can go ahead and vote to put it on, or if you'd like to discuss it, we can certainly take that up at this time.
Discussion, Mr. Bornstein.
I'll make the motion and send it to the school board. I'll make the motion and
Motion
send
made
it
by
to the
Mr.
school board.
Bornstein, second by Sharon Felton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
To move this on to the school board.
Aye.
To move this on to the school
All right, our
board.
next one up should be Appendix C. Appendix C is the school board standing committee procedures. This is part of the bylaws. It's treated like a bylaw. It's just called Appendix C. This is one where we did make some changes to it on there. And so our first change up is under section 4, posting to committee webpage. So 4B, it would now, notice this time that Mrs. Williams has come to the meeting. And good morning, Miss, no, it's afternoon, Mrs. Williams. We are looking at Appendix C. So Appendix C, for posting to committee webpage, under B, it will now read, school board standing committee meetings may be broadcast or done electronically unless circumstances exist that do not allow for this. Looks like we need to, Mrs. Cleveland, we take a look at, there's a couple extra words here that need to get crossed out. I'm not going to happen there. Then it will be posting a recording of a school board committee meeting. These conditions must be met, and then student discipline committee meetings will not be broadcast or done electronically for public viewing, but may be otherwise recorded. So we need a couple more strikeouts there. The purpose of this was we did not normally broadcast them, as obviously this year we've changed that, so we wanted to recognize that. We also recognize that there was some reason we couldn't, we're not by law required to broadcast the committee meetings. That's a choice that you're making. We will tend to do that unless obviously there's a problem with that. And then we noticed for school board disciplinary committee meetings, since the only thing you really do on camera would be to open it up and go into closed session, then you come out and read it. We didn't think it was worth going ahead and broadcasting that, having paying for a team to be here. Obviously, you can come and hear those decisions as they're being read, but we didn't think that was necessary, so we had added that sentence. Student discipline committee meetings will not be broadcasted done electronically for public viewing, but may be otherwise recorded. As you know, we scheduled 6 of those a month, and so that we thought it might not be the best use of resources. Down in 5, under 4B5, we would have, in the final sentence, it would read, all committee members should be consulted before changing the date or time or location of meetings, and the committee members are not required to use limited remote participation option to participate in a meeting. We would just change it, that was, and so we'll read now as that has been changed. Under 6, this is public access to meetings, we would add a final sentence that would say, public comment is not taken at committee meetings unless required by the school board. Remember, these are committee meetings, not a regular school board meeting. So we put that in there so they wouldn't anticipate, because you're now broadcasting and following similar to you do a regular board, that we would automatically add public comments to that. There might be a time, particularly when an ad hoc committee might be taking public comments, that's why we added that restriction, but generally we didn't add the public comment section to this one.
Yeah, I was gonna ask and say really the only time would be an ad hoc, like we had the ad hoc Jericho, I think we took public comment.
Correct, just because, and we're not required by law to have public comments at committee meetings, so we just thought that would be a better explanation. Then we move on to B, which is meeting agendas and minutes, and there we just, there's a correction 2, just to underline that. So under 2, which is meeting minutes, I did speak with Leanne Turnbull, who's in charge of all student leadership, about the meeting requirements. You are actually, the Freedom of Information Act allows you to dispense with meeting minutes if you don't want them at committee meetings. You only have to have them for regular school board meetings. As you know, we generally have committee meetings on it. It doesn't work as well with student discipline committee meetings, because obviously you have the documentation documentation that opens and closes the meeting, you have the written statement, but you don't have a detail as to what you're doing during the meeting. So what we thought would be an appropriate addition to this would be under B2 meeting minutes, we would add a section A, and it would read, student discipline committees are not required to maintain meeting minutes or to have the committee members approve such meeting minutes. However, student discipline committee meetings, agendas, closed session certification, decisions of the committee should be retained for each meeting. Notice student discipline committee meetings will be available to the public, however, and agenda materials will not be available. Again, we try to be very careful with student confidentiality and student meetings on there, so we'll keep a record that we had a meeting. Obviously, the decisions that we read are available to the public, but they're normal agendas and meeting minutes type of during time. We did not believe we needed to have those.
So this action taken, does it come from now that we have structured how we write up our decisions? Because one of the court cases that we had saying that we didn't go through the steps of why we did particular things. So is this addressing that?
No, that's really. No, that's not really any different than we've done. Obviously, your opinions. While we're on appeal with that student discipline case, we have more extensive written opinions on student discipline cases on there. What we weren't having, and a good example would be when you look at the January 28th meeting minutes that you have for this meeting, you don't see that with student discipline committee meetings. So when you come for your student discipline committee, you are not approving the prior month's meeting minutes or the prior semi-monthly meeting that you have. Again, you weren't required to do that, so we wanted to clarify if anybody was looking at our new procedures, because the difference now is we are posting onto your school board committee site, you'll see the meeting minutes, the agenda materials. If somebody was looking for that for student discipline, we didn't want them to be looking for meeting minutes that were approved, because that's not been your procedure. Again, for every committee meeting that you have for student discipline, you will have the open and closed session you've got the agenda, you actually have a small agenda you see at the beginning of this meeting, and then you will have the open and closed certification, and then you will have the meeting, the decision on that student case. So that's being kept in there, but we're not keeping in a meeting format where we're approving meeting minutes. We just, Mrs. Turnbull didn't think that was necessary, and it hasn't been that procedure in the past to do that.
So will Ms. Turn be responsible for retaining?
She does that. She does as a committee. She does that. She already has it. So if you would have called back and said, I heard there was a student discipline committee meeting on March 5th. What do you have for it? We would show you the agenda. We would show you the closed session. We would show you whatever. If you had made a decision, read it out, that would be available.
And did you notice I was reading? How long the records are retained? Are they retained?
Records are retained in accordance with the Virginia, Library of Virginia has a Records Retention Act, which is scheduled, so it depends on the type of meeting or the type of activity, how long it is maintained. So, and they're generally with school board meetings, we kind of keep those in perpetuity. So at a school board meeting with 3 of you on a committee, that would be maintained perpetually. Student discipline committee probably would not be maintained longer, or would be maintained with the student's record and then destroyed after that. Sorry. Here's your records retention manager. So
I can kind of answer that a little bit. So with student discipline records, those are 5 years, so they're the short-term records, whereas some of our student records are 75 years, and they're the long-term records. But if there's any kind of discipline, actually now I think it's 7 years. They just changed it. 7 years. They just changed it. I think it's 7 years.
Thank you.
our next section change would be under C, which is annual election of chair. This currently reads annual election chair at the first meeting in the new fiscal year, and then I suggest that we added this in parentheses, or at the first meeting when all committee members are present. This tends to happen at student discipline committee meetings, so if you're restarting on July 1, sometimes we've had a couple situations where the actual 3 members assigned to the committee were not able to meet until like August or September because people were out of town. town, so it should be the members assigned to that committee should be picking their chair. Doesn't happen a whole lot, but occasionally we have that where people have to substitute. So my suggestion was we add or at the first meeting when all committee meeting members are present. If you read further down in there, you'll hear that if you haven't elected a chair, the prior chair who's still on the committee remains on as the chair, so you will have the chair for that committee. At the end of that paragraph, the final two sentences will now read, if the former chair is not on the committee in the new year, the senior-most school board member on the committee, they will conduct the meetings until a new chair is elected. Then we would add the following sentence. If there's no senior-most school board member on the committee, or the senior-most school board member is not available, then the school board chair or designee will conduct the meeting until a new chair is elected. We had a little bit confusing reading under bylaw 128, which is a separate bylaw that establishes your committees. We're trying to clarify who would do that. So this would be that your senior-most member is going to handle it, and if it's not obvious, if you all elected at the same time and it wasn't clear, then the school board chair will send somebody in. She'll either come yourself or she'll come and conduct your meeting just to get your chair done. We thought that would help clarify this, because that happened on one of the committees. The only change in 2 was an addition of the word committee chair on chair. On that, sorry, C2. And there are no further recommended changes to Appendix C. So that's a lot of information. Do we have any further questions on that?
Yeah, any more questions? C. So do we take the appendix C to the board?
Yes, it's a bylaw. It's
Okay.
considered one of
Okay.
the bylaws.
All right, so do I have a motion to go ahead and approve as amended and take this on to the school board?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Seconded by
Second.
Mr. Bellinsdale. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. So Appendix C will move forward. All right, Policy 259.
Mrs. Williams, we are currently experiencing technical difficulties with the streaming service. We're recording it, we'll put the recording up, but if you're trying to watch it live, we are not able to do that at the moment. The meeting is obviously open to the public, and you can come in. We will get this recording up when we can, but apparently we're having some technical difficulties at the moment. Hence why we had to amend the prior policy that we discussed. Because this happens occasionally. Okay, I believe this moves us on to 259. And 259 is under our general administration. This is outside legal counsel. After some discussion, and you'll see this showing up later on, I thought it might be better to clarify that this is more than outside legal counsel. So my proposal to change the title to outside legal counsel, comma, payment of employees' legal fees, and settlement authorities. I do occasionally have employees or their attorneys call wanting to figure out where the policy is to talk about that, so I thought we'd put in the title so it'd be easier for them to find. And I'll explain to you why we want to talk a little bit about settlement authority. So the first section is A, employment outside counsel, and 1 is authority to employ outside legal counsel. So obviously we have a small department here, so we do occasionally have to hire outside legal counsel. And because we are, unlike the city, we are not allowed to be self-insured. We have to, for insurance purposes, for issues involving liability, anything covered under our insurance policies, the insurance counsel determines when we get, if they're going to assign counsel, if we're going to handle it. So we do have outside counsel in different situations. So the first recommendation for change is A1, authority to employ outside legal counsel, A, and if you follow along in the first sentence under Roman numeral small 4, any school division official, I wrote comma, employer agent, because officials are going to be someone like Mrs. Woodhouse, Mr. Delaney, but other employees might be there. Sometimes we have individuals that we hire on contract, so I want to make sure we clarify that they would be covered for that on Bible. At the end of this paragraph, I'm proposing that we add the following sentence. Outside counsel retained by the school board's insurance carrier to represent the school board or its officials, employees, or agents do not require school board approval. That's because your insurance policy requires that the outside counsel assign it to them. You'll hear me sometimes when I come and explain to you who outside legal counsel is. You have someone built into the policy policy to ask for a change, but because it's covered under the insurance policy, they determine who the outside counsel is. So I'm going to clarify that piece. Add to the third paragraph, I added a C to that because it was not there, and then I decided to make CD. So D would be retention and payment of outside legal counsel for those employees whose contracts require allow for such retention. Payment will be done in accordance with the contract terms. Both the superintendent and I have separate contracts and have contractual relations in there. Other employees end up having to go complete their legal matters and come back to you after the fact and ask for that. There are terms within certain of your official. And right now, it's the superintendent and school board attorney that require how you have to pay for legal things. So I added that section in there. That would renumber what was D to be C. Under 2, selection criteria, my proposal is to take out C, which talked about outside legal counsel. This was a requirement when we were, your legal services were still provided by the city attorney's office. They had some rules about using people locally on there. We actually have attorneys that are not local because they're cheaper for us to have better expertise on it. So my proposal, and there's no law that requires us to use local counsel for that. So I went ahead and pulled that out. That would then renumber the rest of the section so you see the renumbering down there. Under 3, which is direction and reporting, how outside counsel does. So it would now read, outside counsel shall work at the direction of the school board or the school board's duly authorized designee. This should be an additional sentences. The school board's in-house legal counsel is authorized to work with outside legal counsel regarding routine matters and will communicate with the school board regarding the status of the legal matter. When the school board's in-house legal counsel has a conflict with the legal matter or is the subject of the legal matter, the school board chair will be the direct contact for the outside legal counsel. As I said, because you only meet every other week, sometimes every week, because their daily decisions have to be made sometimes. We were just codifying the fact that I would handle that, someone in my office would handle that. We would delete the rest of that particular sentence about settlement. I'm going to show you where that's going to show up later on. So if you go down, I think there's a couple formatting changes in section B, more grammatical changes on there, renumbering. And so then my proposal is to add a section C called settlement authority. The way it was written before was I had settlement authority up to a certain amount of money, but I spoke with the risk manager. And the risk manager, you have on a daily basis with 800 or more vehicles on the street. You know, there are minor accidents happening all the time. We clip a sign, we hit somebody's side mirror or something coming down. There's small cases like that. There are minor injuries that people have under a certain amount of dollars. There's work compensation matters which don't come to you. Your risk manager makes a lot of those daily decisions. There's small issues. We've had copyright issues where we might have a copyright violation. They wanted to settle for $500 and all. The risk manager has been doing that for decades, as far as I can tell. And we and I have talked about this a couple times. So we thought maybe we should clarify that, put that in here so it's understood that he has the authority to do that. So we would propose in section C, we would call settlement authority. The school division's risk manager or the chief finance officer are authorized to settle negligence, personal injury, workers' compensation claims, contract, intellectual property, and other legal claims against the school board, the school division, its employees, officers, or agents under circumstances set forth below. 1. The settlement amount does not exceed $50,000. 2. The school board's insurance carrier and the school board's in-house legal counsel or outside legal counsel assigned to the matter have reviewed and concurred regarding the settlement offer. And 3, the school board and the superintendent receive notice of the settlement within a reasonable time period after the settlement is accepted. I think that's a reasonable amount. Those are very small amounts. General district court type amounts, minor issues. That way we don't have to hold up a settlement on a minor case to get to a school board meeting. And again, occasionally I will come to you about it, but for the most part these have been handled through the risk management office for decades, so we thought we would codify. And those would be all of our recommendations for 259. Are there any questions?
All right. Any questions, Mr. Brownfield? Any questions, Mr. Brownfield?
Only that I see that the last time we looked at it was in 2021, so it is for annual review. No other drastic changes that has come down, like you said, some of this is just for our own division and things, how we work it out. And do know that you come to us in closed session and give us the updates on things as well. So it's just time for this to be updated. It's just time for this to be updated.
We did a
Correct.
slightly,
We did a
extend
slightly
change 2021 on how you did employee fees, to try to streamline that process, so you didn't have to get prior approval before they could do that. And so we changed it that time, we looked at it then, but I don't think we've ever incorporated the settlement authority piece before.
And the 50,000, that was just the point that you felt was kind of the breaking point between small and large.
Yeah, when we talked about this,
we talked about
most of these little claims are not that much money. They're fairly not that much money. But if it were to get in the paper out in the public, when would you want to know as a school board matter? And while $50,000 is not insignificant for regular people, in legal matters, that's not a very high amount of money. So we thought at that point, maybe after that, maybe the school board needs to know what's going on and talk about it. So other than that, we thought it was a negligible amount of money. It's not, understand, it's not negligible to most people, but in the legal world, we didn't think that was significant.
Okay, is everybody good with that? All right, do I have a motion to accept policy 2-59 outside legal counsel as amended and to move forward to school board?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and we will move 259 on to the school board. Thank you. Okay, policy 3-1.
3-1 is under your business and non-instructional operations section. This has to do with financial management. It was reviewed by the finance department. They had no recommended changes, so it has not been reviewed since 2021. So you're simply on the 5-year review. So, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
There was one change, it was just, there was a random one in section B, so they just took that out, so that is strict.
I apologize. So that would be an amendment.
Attorney Linetti, petty cash fund. Could you explain that a little bit more? Where is it?
I am going to pass that over to Mr. Delaney on petty cash, because that's handled at usually the department or the school level.
It's the last page.
I'm only responding because you're looking at me, so,
I mean, but I'll tell you what I know from audit purposes. Schools keep a certain amount of cash on hand, which is audited on our fairly, with the normal course of business on there. And I think they're authorized up to $2,000 at the department or school level, so. And then I do know, we see this in the audit committee, this will show up in their annual reviews and all, but I can tell you just, I think it's just a setting amount that you can have at the school.
So what is the criteria? For petty cash, Miss?
And Miss Linetti, I would have to refresh my memory, but I thought schools were not allowed to have a petty cash fund. And I will tell you, we do not have a petty cash fund in the superintendent's office. All funds have to be receipted daily, deposited. There is no such thing as a petty cash fund that I remember as a principal. You could not have a petty cash fund. And since I've been in the superintendent's office, we do not maintain, nor do we have a petty cash fund. So I'm not for sure where that particular
because the audit
came
committee,
from.
we discussed that one time at length, that we, to make sure that our bookkeepers and our coaches and our sponsors know that they are to turn that money in every single day and that there's no money at the school. So, yeah, I'm not sure about that petty cash fund.
I will say this doesn't require authorize it. Do you wanna, we could push this to next month to get somebody from finance, I can't speak to where they are.
Right, I can, I'll get somebody from finance to come down. This in particular doesn't say anything about school, it says the superintendent is authorized. And I am pretty confident Dr. Robertson is not trying to authorize anyone to have a petty cash fund.
All right, is that good with my colleagues to go ahead and send this out?
Yes.
Yeah, this is only on for the 5-year
This is
check,
only
so,
on for the
5-year
Okay, so we'll take, do I have a motion to bring policy 3-1 back to the PRC committee and get information from finance?
So move.
Okay, moved by Ms. Felton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bonesteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor? Opposed? All right, 3-1 will be brought back to PRC, and we'll get some answers or someone here to educate us more about the petty cash fund or lack thereof.
And that will complete the new business on the agenda for today.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are moving on to the sick leave bank, and I actually brought this up because an employee called me and was confused or concerned. So I guess what I need, since a constituent and one of our employees brought this up, is to kind of just, if someone could review exactly how the sick leave works, what happens when you, how many days an employee gets, how it works, what it's used for, what happens when you run out, can you borrow, donate sick leave, does it roll over to the next year, just kind of some information about sick leave.
We conscripted Ms. Ensman from the Human Resources Department to come explain this to you.
Good, thank you. I saw her, and that's why I knew we could ask all these questions. I'm sorry?
It's not quite as easy as that. However, for teachers, we front them 10 days of leave at the beginning of each school year. It's their sick leave. Their personal reasons leave is also fronted at the beginning of each school year, and the number of days is determined by how long they've been with us. In term, sick leave can roll over, so if you don't use your sick leave, it rolls into the next school year, to the next school year, and it continues to roll. If you retire from us, you can get a payout with your sick leave. If you resign from us, then we hold your sick leave for up to 10 years. Or if you transfer to a Virginia school division and request us to send you your sick leave, we will send it up to a certain amount of days. So that's like sick leave in general. You can use sick leave if you're sick or a family member is sick.
Oh, of course.
At that point, so now do we want to probably go on to what is a sick leave bank as opposed to?
Ms. Ensman clarified, people watching the payout, because payout for sick leave is prorated at a certain percent, 25%.
It's 25% of your per diem at retirement only.
And it can, if I'm correct, it can also be used to purchase VRS time too. That's not a choice.
That goes through the benefits office. Yes.
Correct.
Okay, let's pause there, because we may have some questions. I know Mr. Bowen still has a question. Mr. Bowen still has a question.
Okay, I'm all in favor of rolling it over, but is there any way, because I've been in business before, where you could cap it out? So they can't just take it for 40 years and then all of a sudden have this huge amount of money. Is that possible that we could put a cap on that?
We're not required to. Could we? Yes. Yes. But at this time, we're not required to cap out sick leave. We do cap out personal reasons and annual leave because those are paid out differently from sick leave. But when you cash out your sick leave and it's only retirement, it's at 25%. So it's not even your regular per diem amount.
And Mr. Bowenstiel, I would not recommend we cap sick leave. For many of our employees, they try to bank that leave pending, whether it be a medical situation. Many of our teachers who are having families try to build up that leave so that they are paid over that time frame. And as Ms. Ensman stated, and I know when I was in HR, payout around sick leave was minimal. It was the annual leave where the school board did put a cap on the annual leave to kind of help out in terms of those large payments for employees who are typically with us 30+ years and choose to cash out their leave.
Well, I wasn't so much,
Is your concern the use of it, that they saved up 1,000 days, now they're not coming in for a year or two? Is that what your concern is?
that was more, I mean, I don't have a problem with giving them the sick leave. I'm not looking at the cap in that.
I'm not looking at the cap.
It's just a matter of a financial point to where if they hit. I'm just asking a question.
So that kind of gets more into leave, so it goes back to, you can only take sick leave if you're ill, or a family member's ill, and then that has to be certified by a doctor. So if you're gonna be out for more than 10 consecutive days, there's the FMLA and documentation process to allow you to be out longer than those 10 days. So if you have 100 days of sick leave built up, we would require medical documentation that the doctor says you must be out, and that goes through my office. That doesn't go through a principal or anyone else of that. But it has to be documented by a doctor. You can't just call Miss Woodhouse and say, I'm not gonna be here for the next 30 days. I'm gonna take my sick leave.
Well, it's not really what I was after, but I'm gonna let it go.
Then Ms. Esmond, then what is the sick leave bank? How does that supplemental work with the regular supplemental work?
So the sick leave bank is a little bit more complicated than you would think. The sick leave bank was initially started way back in the 90s. I've been here for 32 years, so I was one of the original first sick leave bank members. You have to donate your sick leave, 2 days, I think, is the current amount, to join. The bank is then holds these sick days. Anyone who's a member, after certain rules, you can access the bank. You have to have first used all of your sick leave in order to access the bank, because remember, it's a group bank that everyone contributes to. It's not required to join the bank, it is completely optional. And it's mostly for the Plan 1 and Plan 2 employees, again, those of us who've been around for a while, because the hybrid employees have short-term disability that comes with their VRS plan, that does not come with Plan 1 and Plan 2 members. So after, if you are a hybrid employee, meaning you were hired this year, for 1 year, you can be part of the bank because short-term disability will not cover you. After your first year, if you're out under medical care, short-term disability pays for you to be out ill, depending on your situation, how many years you've worked. It's a 60, 80, or 100% from short-term disability. So those members are covered by outside short-term disability, whereas our Plan 1 and Plan 2, your older members are not covered under short-term disability, so they have the option to join the sick leave bank.
Do you join that, 2 days, do you join it at the first of the year, or can you join it anytime?
So you can join, we have an enrollment period, and it's right at the beginning, or when you're first hired. And then you don't have to donate again unless we tell you that the bank is low. And if the bank is low, you can choose to stay in by donating, or you can opt out and say, I no longer want to be a member.
Oh, so it's not every year? It's not every year? Now, the bank, okay. Now, but you could donate anytime, more days or not? You just do the
No,
2
we
days.
only ask you to when the bank is low.
Ms. Felton, did you have a question? Ms. Felton, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a little bit about the sick bank. How are those, at least you can join it. At least you can join it. And we had, and you're right, it started in the 90s. They sent memos asking, do you want to contribute to the sick bank? But of my time, if I had time over, I could contribute to, but I could only contribute so many hours for people that had run out of time, that might have a terminal illness, whatever it is. Well, yeah, you can, but you can only give up to You can only give up
$10.
to, and that was it.
$10.
So is this
And that
how
was it.
this bank
So
work
is
as
this
well
how
or
this
not?
bank
No,
work
that's
as well or
different.
not?
That would
Okay.
be donation of leave.
That would be donation
So
of leave.
if
So
somebody in
if
your building is
somebody
ill
in
and
your
they are
building
out
is
of
ill
leave,
and they are
the
out of
person can
leave,
request from the
person can
supervisor that
request from
they
the
send out
supervisor
to the
that they
staff
send out
a
to the
need for
staff
donated
a
leave
need
because
for
this person's
donated
out on
leave because
medical
this person's
care
out on medical
and is
care
out of sick leave.
and is
Anyone
out
who
of
would
sick
like to
leave.
donate
Anyone
can
who would like to
donate, and
donate
there's an
can
X amount of
donate,
hours
and
they
there's
can
an X
accept,
amount
and
of
I don't know
hours
that
they
number
can
off the
accept,
top of
and I
my
don't
head.
So
know
can
that
you
number
donate
off
to an
the top of my
individual?
head.
Like,
Can you donate
like
to
I
an
said, we
individual?
knew
Like
people in,
like I said,
in
we knew
individuals
people
that
individuals
that had
that
terminal
they had
illnesses, and I said, well, I want my time to go to
illnesses, and I
this
said, well, I
person.
want
So
my time to go to this
that
person.
can be
So
done with this.
that can be done with
That's
this.
not sick leave bank, that's
That's not
donation
sick
of
leave,
leave.
that's
And
donation
it's,
of leave.
they can
And
access
it's-
your
They can
donations after
access
they've
your
used all of
donations
their
after
own
they've
personal
used
leave.
all
But
of
after
their own
they've used
personal leave.
theirs, why aren't they going to the built-up sick leave bank?
Remember, they're two different things.
Remember, they're
So
two
if you're
different
in the
things. So
sick
if you're
bank,
You're in the sick bank.
then you're going
You're in
to
the sick
access the
bank.
Then you're
bank
going to
until
access
your
the
your
bank
time in the
until
bank
your-
runs
your
out.
time in the
Then
bank
if you
runs out.
need
Then you would go,
donations, then you would go.
Then you would
So
go.
it's
Then
not,
you would go. So it's not
a clear cut
it's not a
process
clear-cut
depending on
process
each
depending
individual
on
situation.
each
We have to
individual
investigate
situation. We
each
have to
person
investigate
to
each
see
person
where they are,
to see where they
how much
are,
leave they have.
how much
It's
leave
not
they have.
clean
It's
because
not
of the
clean
VRS
because
retirement
of
plans.
the VRS retirement plans.
Okay, and then if an employee finds themselves in a dire situation like this, they can call you and you can walk them all through all the different options and navigate all that.
Yes, unfortunately, not everyone
everyone
has leave options. Once your
has
leave
leave
is
options.
exhausted,
Once your
it
leave
is
is exhausted,
exhausted. We have no
it
other
is
leave
exhausted.
options
We
for
have
you.
no
So
other leave
at
options
times,
for
people
you.
will
So
go
at
into a leave
times,
without
people
pay
will go
status.
into a leave
But
without
my
pay
team
status.
does their
But my
best
team
to
does their
find as
best
many
to
possible ways to
find
keep
as many
someone paid
possible
as
ways
long
to
as
keep
we
someone
can.
paid as long as we can.
So, and help me to understand too
help me to
about
understand, too,
number one. I'll
about,
get back to the eligible
number one,
employees,
I'll
but
get back to the
the one
eligible
about
employees, but
donating
the one
to
about donating
the
to
sick bank, right?
the
You
sick
donate,
bank, right? You
not the
donate.
donation bank. I'm not talking about the
Not the
donation bank. I'm talking about the
donation bank. I'm not talking about the
employee
donation bank. I'm talking about
that
the
gives to
employee
sick leave.
that gives to
So
sick
that's
leave.
your time that you're putting
So
in the
that's your
sick
time that you're putting in the sick
leave bank.
leave
That's
bank.
your time.
Right,
That's your
so
time.
if you're a member
So if
of
you're
the
a
sick leave
member
bank, you
of the
give
sick
your
leave
time.
bank, you give your
And
time.
if you, as a
And
member
if
of the
you,
bank,
as a
need
member
to
of the
use
bank,
it, you
need to
can,
use
along
it,
with
you can,
everyone
along
else's
with
donations.
everyone else's donations
Until you're out of the bank.
until
So
you're
how
out
do
of
I
the
become
bank.
a member
So how
of
do
the
I
sick
become a
leave bank?
member of the
What's the
sick leave
criteria
bank?
for that?
What's the criteria for that?
You can join
You can
within,
join
when you're first hired.
when you're first
If
hired.
you're hybrid, it only
If you're
lasts for
hybrid,
1 year.
It only lasts for
If you're
1 year.
Plan 1 or Plan
If you're
2,
Plan 1
you
or
can
Plan
join
2,
at any time
you can
during the
join
open
at any
enrollment, which
time
is
during
usually the
open
first
enrollment,
month or
which is
two of
usually the
school.
first month or two
Or
of
you're
school.
already a member.
Or
We
you're
have like
already a member. We have, like,
3,000 members right now in the
3,000
sick leave
members
bank.
right now in the sick
And
leave
you
bank.
join by donating.
And you
Those
Join
two
by
days.
donating those two.
Join by
Mhm.
donating
And you
those
stay
2
in it
And you
unless you
stay
ask
in
to
it
be removed,
unless you
or we
ask to
tell
be
you
removed,
that the
or we
bank is
tell you
low and
that
we
the
need to
bank is
assess
low and
another
we
2
need to
days.
assess
And then you
another
can
2
choose to
days.
stay
And then you
in
can choose to
or
stay
get
in,
out, and new
or
people can
get out,
choose
and new
choose to
people can
join.
choose to join.
So how much of my time? How much of my time
How much of my
can
time
I donate to the sick
can I
bank?
donate to the sick?
Is there a
sick bank?
limitation of how much of
Is
my
there a
time
limitation of how much
that I
of
can
my time
donate
that I can
in case
don-
I get sick?
donate in
It's
case
just
I
the
get
2
sick?
days.
It's
That's all
just
we
the 2
ask
days.
for is
That's all we
2
ask
days,
for is
unless the
2
bank
days,
is depleted.
unless the
So
bank
you're
is
in that
depleted.
bank, so
So
you don't
you're
have
in
to
that
give
bank.
any more
You
days.
don't have to give any more days.
Unless the bank gets depleted.
Unless the bank gets depleted.
How does it get depleted?
How does
People
it get
use
depleted?
People
So
use it.
so it's basically a pool of money
Pool of
that
money
we all donate
that we
to.
all donate
And
to.
if I'm sick,
And
even though I
if
gave
I'm
2
sick,
days,
even though I gave 2
I
days,
can use, I think it's
I
like
can
50
use,
days
I think it's like 50
of the bank. after the 50 days, I can then ask anyone to donate leave to me, or I'm in a leave without pay status.
Okay.
All of that, so if we all donate 2 days, I'm using all of your days and then some until I can no longer use the bank, and we do cap that at 50 days.
Does the bank go low where you have to try to assess everybody 2 more days? Like, does that happen every year, once every 5 years, once every 10 years?
It hasn't happened, I want to say at least 5, 8 years. It hasn't gone low.
Okay, cool.
And I was about to say, even then it was 1 day. So I joined the sick bank when I started with the division almost 30 years ago. And I had to give 2 days initially. And I think probably about 10 years or so later, we got a letter indicating the bank was running low. And if you wanted to remain a member, we had to do like 1 more day. I think in my 30 years, I've added 3 days. We did look up sick leave bank is policy 4-45.2, and it outlines everything Ms. Ensman has talked about, where you can join when you're hired or in August, or we have another jump on date in October, and that you can use if you qualify through HR, through obviously medical determinations, up to 50 days. So for an employee who's going to be out for a year, that goes back to Mr. Bonesteel, your question about accumulating sick leave. We advise all of our employees to use their leave wisely, because you never know what's going to happen, what emergencies may occur, so that accumulated leave does help. The donation of leave that you're referencing, Ms. Felton, that does occur. We actually had an employee in this building who, for unforeseen reasons, went out with surgery, had to extend their time. They qualified through HR to be able to ask for donated leave. Many folks donated. I myself even donated to the individual. And I will say, thanks to changes in regulations, the restrictions on donated leave are much better than they were when I first came into the division. You were capped at 2 days. You couldn't donate to immediate family, and now you can donate in increments of hours. You can exceed the 2-day limit. Like I donated to this individual 3 days because I had the time and I knew they needed it. So there was a lot of flexibility given. But in my almost 30 years, I've only had to donate 3 total days to the sick leave bank. To me, it's like insurance. You hope you never have to use it. You hope you never have to use it if you need it, but it is maximum of 50 days. So if you're out for a year, that's where Ms. Ensman was saying, you can exhaust your leave first, then use 50 days of the sick leave, and then you might then have to ask for donation of leave. Yes, ma'am.
And Mrs. Benson, we were in the process of doing a new regulation of 445.2 because we needed to explain how the hybrid employees work. Relatively new concept. We were holding to see if there was anything that needed to be changed, so that regulation will be coming out, which will better explain that the hybrid can be for 1 year and can't afterwards, and some explanation. So that will be, unless it's something coming out of this meeting, we will go ahead and get that regulation up in the next week or two. What I will point out is, this is not something the school board controls because you didn't grant this leave. This is earned leave that the employees have chosen to put into a bank. So the employees in that bank control it. There have to be rules. We have to rules on this, but this would be something where the school board could come and say, well, I think everybody should get 60 days leave, not 50 days leave. You don't control that. You can't grant it to somebody else because that belongs to employees in the bank. So what today's explanation was to understand why we don't do it. There also, when you're dealing with leave, a lot of complicated rules like the Family Medical Leave Act, how many weeks you can take out. So even if you have all this leave, we may not be able to keep you out longer. So you may have had all these donations organizations to leave, but you've exceeded the amount of time we're required to give you time off. So leave is very, very complicated, and that's what Miss Anson's folks do. Or it can be set after 12 months on FMLA leave. If you're on workers' comp, you may get some time workers' comp, then you may get FMLA leave. So when we talk about leave, the rules are pretty strict. Also, I think Mr. Bowenstern was asking a question. This is something that government accounting standard, the GASB, that serve on audit committee, heard about them, they set standards. They did a number of years ago start requiring that we make sure we maintain any organization that has leave that's earned and owed, that you maintain it appropriately so those funds are there when needed. So when you hear folks, old folks like me who have a lot of sick leave left out, will that money be there when needed in the future? So there are now GASB standards, I think it's been the last 5 years, that you have to maintain and demonstrate that you can pay for that leave if you're allowing an employee to build it up. Otherwise, that's where you do see the limit, particularly on annual leave. 400 is a pretty common amount of hours that they cap you out on. So all those are, they are controlled by GASB rules. One last question, and thank you, Ms. Emerson, for your patience in explaining this to us, because some things, you hear things, you hear complicated much, it can be complicated when you talk about it, but when you talk about it, but is this open to all the employees in this system? In this system,
to anyone, but remember there's rules on, if you're hybrid, if you can only be a member for, you can only be a member for then Plan 1 and Plan 2. Then Plan 1 and Plan 2. They can join at any time. So if there's a Plan 1 member who's out there, has never joined, comes in the fall, they can donate their 2 days and join.
So I'm speaking of the bus driver to the custodians, to the custodians,
anyone in a benefited position who earns join if they meet the criteria.
I'm not so interested. I'm not so interested. Thank you for explaining the school board not having any type of ruling over it. I just appreciate those individuals that have that moral compass of doing that. And like I said, when I was at ODU, they had stipulations on how much we would give and how much we would give. And it angered me a little bit because I had time and wanted to get that. But there were times too with that annual if you got up to ODU, if you got up to 400. They said you need to take this time. They said you need to take this time. And they sent me a letter and they sent me a letter to make sure they were talking about me. To make sure they were talking about me. So I had to take that time or lose it. Thank you for explaining it. If that's some of the things we have to explore, some of the things we have to explore our employees are concerned.
They can contact our office. All of the associates are very well versed in this. And I have one in particular who understands Plan 1, Plan 2 hybrid, and we utilize her a lot too. It gets very complicated. Our go-to person.
And Ms. Felton, if I could add one more thing, because I heard you say that use it or lose it. If you exceed your annual leave, then it is converted automatically to sick leave. So we do have a cap in our division. Once upon a time when I never took leave, I would get that letter every year. I would get that letter every year. I think with the focus now so much on mental health, so much on encouraging our employees to take some time, that concern as much as we probably did in the past. You never lose it in Virginia Beach, but it does convert, which is a different payout if you have to be an employee, if you have to be an employee looking to retire down the line.
All right, well, thank you. That was very helpful. I think helpful. I know three of us. I think very informative. Very informative. I don't see that we need to make any changes. Move forward. There's no really vote on it. We look forward to the regulations that y'all are working on. All right, so now we're moving to policy 6-18, I believe. Yes.
On the board is 6:18, which is instructional time. And what we were asked to do was bring this up so you could discuss it today. There is no proposed language on there because we just asked to bring this up to look at. I do know that some folks, school board members have put some information they'd like us to consider, and I think this is a follow-on to last night's discussion. So I don't know if Mrs. Weems, if you want to take it there, I was informed, I did a qualified school board member, if you're going to talk about adding, there's a sentence that she wanted added, so I would need to give that to you information. But if you want to go through discussion on this, I'll add it when it's relevant.
Well, I mean, we had a robust discussion last night. I think that this was actually requested to be on PRC agenda, I think, way back in January. The reason why we talked about it last night, obviously, was because it was also brought up by a couple members in the budget cycle. So it just kind of happened to coincide with each other. I know, I have actually talked with, I think, four board members since last night. So I think that this will be a beginning of conversation, because obviously we're not gonna, I think there's a lot of conversations still to be had when it comes to Chromebooks. So I really don't expect the three of us to like finish this policy and have a recommendation, because I think that can perhaps come back to us in 3 weeks, because we meet again at the end of this month. But the feedback that I heard loud and clear, and I guess I'll start with what I think is pretty much universal, and what I think the majority of the board definitely said last night, and to me on side conversations, is that the board does not think it's appropriate for Chromebooks to be sent home to our pre-K through 5th graders. And I know there's only a few schools that do that. So I think that somewhere in this policy, that sentence could be put in there. And again, since we just talked about it last night, none of us have had time to write anything and present it.
I just want to make sure I heard you clearly. You said pre-K through what grade? You said pre-K through what grade?
Yeah, 5th grade. Okay. So something like Chromebooks will not be sent home. Pre-K sent home. Pre-K through 5th grade. Unless, inclement
What the
weather.
superintendent,
Inclement
what the
weather.
superintendent basically
Yeah.
designates to send them home.
And so.
To send them home.
And we don't, and I think if it's okay with Ms. Felton, and Ms. Felton, we just kind of bring up these points, I don't know if we need to sit here and word out everything, but if we kind of bring up this.
If you want to, we'll keep notes as to what you want. We'll keep notes as to what you want.
We've got the expert here in the house that spoke with us last night on technology. And then, because we want to hear from our experts, maybe next time, if we come up with some thoughts, if we come up with some thoughts, is this going to work? What are the unintended consequences? What are the unintended consequences? So I think loud and clear. So I think loud and clear. Chromebooks don't go home unless there's inclement weather. Now, colleagues. In my opinion, maybe this is getting in the weeds. I don't think it's getting in the weeds. I don't think a kindergartner should even take inclement weather. But in want to break it down. Do y'all have any thoughts about that? And I'm not sure what was said last night. I'm not sure what was said last night because there was so much conversation. Do we have any thoughts on that?
My thought is that should be a real problem because I don't think first graders should even have access to Chromebooks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for opening up the conversation, Chair. And it's a lot to be said. When we first started having the conversation about Chromebooks, it was centered around the budget. And some of my colleagues was working their way through eliminating Chromebooks. If it dealt with the budget. Since it didn't deal with the budget, we began to talk about other things. Honestly, myself,
myself, I do not look forward to get digging in the weeds to create a policy for Chromebooks. I think that Chromebooks are an essential educational resource. And if we are at the point where we need to limit, I think that should solely rest in the hand of the superintendent. In the hand of the superintendent. That is my you have different schools doing different things. And there are some schools we named about five. They're allowing students to take their Chromebooks home. But I know Title I, schools down CTAC for one. Do not allow Burnett. Did not allow the student to take a Chromebook home, and the Chromebook home, and they need accessibility to it because it was lesson clear that the parent and the child needed. The instructor and that they would not take the Chromebook home. That they would not take the Chromebook home. I think this is a conversation. It wasn't consumed with the budget. It wasn't consumed with the budget. And you're right. And you're right. To what you just said earlier. I go back to what you just said earlier. It's some points we need to put down. It's some points we need to put down. We're in the budget season, and I think this conversation, and I think this conversation that need to take time. We need some evidence, of what is happening. That's my first. That's my first to table it until we get out of the budget season, so that we can have some more budget season, so that we can have some genuine conversation, healthy. That is my first conversation about it. That is my first. If that does not settle, you all, I have another proposal. I have another proposal.
Okay. And I know a couple of us did bring it up. Because it was a budget item. But I know when I brought it up, I had concerns than just a budgetary. I was just curious about what, I was just curious about what, if any savings that we could have. That we could have. Okay, so the feedback that I heard last night, and the feedback that I've gotten from individuals is to not have the Chromebooks taken home, and then also Chromebook or similar devices will not be utilized. Some have said first grade, some have said second grade. Have said that we just don't use them. So that we just don't use them. They're not going to go home. If we don't use them, they're not going to go home. So the language in there would be something like Chromebooks will not be utilized. Similar devices will not be utilized pre-K through second grade.
Well, then how about proposal? Pre-K through first grade. They do not take them home. They do not take them home. And to second grade to third grade, they be limited. Third grade, they be limited. Limited time, 1-to-1.
Okay, so you're saying still provide. For pre-K, kindergarten.
No.
You said not take them home. First grade. You said not take them home.
No. Take them out of take them out of kindergarten, pre-K, first grade, take them completely out. First grade, take them completely out.
So you would rather have Chromebook or similar devices will not be utilized. Pre-K through first grade. Okay.
And then the grades. Did I say first to second? They have them in school, but limited. And not take them home.
Okay, and not take them home. You just said pre-K will not be utilized pre-K through first grade. So that we can't limit them to first grade if they're not being used.
I'm sorry, it'll be a pre-K through 1. It'll be a eliminate 1.
Okay, and then
eliminate
second grade, and then second grade have time frame parameters
and not take it home. And not take it home.
Okay. Well, let's. I think. Cammie guide me here because I think that I think that we, for this committee to kind of bring up, so we have someone suggesting, so we have someone suggesting pre-K through second and some pre-K through second and some can we just kind of put that and can we just kind of put that and get discussion? Next time get discussion. Or do you want us to come back more with a,
We could,
come back more with a?
we could, I mean, I brought, yeah, we just said I could graph tables or you put in a table so you could look and make adjustments. That's not hard to do. You just have to decide why it's appropriate or not.
Because I think that's good, and I don't want the three of us. And I don't want the three of us to go pre-K through second, or pre-K through second, without pre-K through first, being able to, without put them both out there, think about it, get some feedback, think about it, get some feedback, and then have our experts to come next time and say, what is the big difference of second grade? Convince me we need them in second grade. Convince me we need them in second grade. Or what are the pros of having them in second grade? Or what are the pros of having them in second grade? What are the cons of having them in second grade? Is that appropriate for us to do it that way? Is that appropriate for us to do it that way?
I can do it, I can draft this out. I can draft this out. Discussion points for the next meeting. Discussion points for the next meeting. And then
is that fine, my colleagues here, kind of just draft out and then next time come back? And then next time.
And I'm assuming because you didn't speak last night, anything above second grade, we're not talking about any other grades, right? Pre-K,
said to limit in second and third grade. Limit in second and third grade.
I think we should limit it. I think we should limit it all the way through fifth.
So now we've got limitations. So now we've got limitations. Like one of my questions that pops up in my building, probably in most buildings, third graders have co-teachers, some third, fourth teachers, some third, fourth, fifth graders switch and have three different teachers and have three different teachers. So I have two different teachers. If we're going to limit it, which teacher decides? Which teacher decides? That just seems real complicated to me. That just seems real complicated. Something like that. You know, something like that. You know, at first I'm like, yes, limit because last night I'm thinking, last night I'm thinking, fifth grader had three different teachers.
Well, maybe I used the wrong word, limited. Maybe I used the wrong word, limited. How about parameters? That the principals I've talked to, that the principals I've actually had a principal when I walked in. I've actually had a principal when I walked in. She said, don't take my Chromebooks. She said, don't take my Chromebooks from my second graders. And I discussed something that we were looking at a card. And then talking to more principals, they said, but that isn't feasible either because of days when there's inclement weather. When there's inclement weather, we wouldn't be able to send them home to second graders because there wouldn't be enough. Seeing how it's not a budget issue, or money issue, then, you know, let them all have it. And almost every principal I've talked to said they should not be going home. They get damaged, even when they come back from the weather. Even when they come back from the weather, parents don't want to pay for the money. Parents don't want to pay for the money. They're not charged. You know, that's just what they've been feeding me back. They've been feeding me back. And but they did seem like they really wanted them in the second grade. Many of them were had any issues with kindergarten, but they wanted parameters set around. But they wanted parameters, and we're not in a hurry. I don't think it's not an issue that we have to settle right away. So
Chair Weems, do you mind if I add, this morning, regularly scheduled meeting with the small group, the superintendent hosts. We happen to have a meeting this morning with a group of about 11 elementary, and the topic did surface. And we wanted to also get their feedback because the survey really was geared to the teachers, not necessarily the principals. And one of the concerns that was voiced mainly was second grade too. It was second grade because the third grade teachers were quite concerned with all of the testing, with all of the third graders take that third graders take device on the device and requirements around the technology used for third graders with drag and drop and different things. If second graders are at least not exposed to some of that, it would be a greater challenge. It would be a greater challenge for the third graders, and also some of the assessments that second graders take on the device as well. They also totally understood about not taking the devices home. They did share with us some home, they did share with us some of them would need some charging, different things, and we said obviously we would have to take a look at obviously we would have to take a look at the outcome, the direction from the school board, because again resources could be shifted if you're talking about taking Chromebooks away, you know, the conversation around what do you do around whether and I think that was discussed a little bit. Discussed a little bit. Sometimes we have advanced notice of inclement weather, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we don't. And whether or not schools would have sufficient time to put together packets, because that's what we're going to be talking about. Because that's what we're going to be talking about. Put together, having to put together for kids to take home, for kids to take home, the interaction that the teachers can have with students. But again, if we're talking pre-K, but again, if we're talking pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, but they really were advocating for keeping the devices in the second grade, and so it mirrors exactly what Mr. Bowen Steele was saying. I think Mr.
Also,
Delaney
if I could add, one principal actually brought up the fact that the majority of our new teachers, younger teachers, that's what they were raised on. So that's what they were raised on. So take it away from them would actually make it harder on them. Actually make it harder on them. Not that they couldn't do it, but they couldn't do it. But you said it seems to be it's all around the students, but we need to take a look at some of our teachers, especially the younger ones who have been trained in the younger ones who have been trained on how it would affect them as far as how it would affect them as far as their teaching goes.
Okay, I feel like we need to kind of. I feel like we need to kind of. Okay, so the three of us, do we agree? The three of us, do we want as one of our bullet points to really seriously discuss Chromebooks or any device. They do not go home from pre-K through fifth grade. From pre-K through fifth grade, except for in inclement weather. Are we in inclement weather? Are we in agreement to discuss next week? To move that forward to discuss next week, or in 3 weeks, that they don't go home. Because that was loud and clear last night from our school. Loud and clear last night from our school. And only 6 schools allow them. And only 6 schools allow them.
Well, you're adding some grades that we didn't discuss last night. But that we only discussed K through 2 last night. So K through 2 last night. So we would need to bring to you some discussion on your points. What are some unintended consequences? What are some unintended consequences? Third, fourth, and fifth not taking.
So next week we want to hear none of the Chromebooks going home K through 2. None of the Chromebooks going home K through 2. And then we want to hear positively and negatively if they don't go home through 5. Statement. Okay, is that what we want? Statement. Okay, is that what we want? Okay, so we're going to hear from it. Okay, so we're going to hear from you and that. We're going to hear from you. You might not say too much today, but I'm trying to give you like specific directions of what you're going to come back with. And then as far as no devices at all, we want to hear about Chromebooks or iPads from pre-K through first grade. And then we want to hear the pros and cons of having no devices in second grade or keeping it as is in second through fifth. Okay. All right. And then we want to hear about the pros and cons. Second through fifth grade or third through fifth grade. Hard, easy, manageable, feasible. It would be to put on some sort of parameter of screen time at those grades.
Do you mind if I comment on that just for the group? I would just ask as you look at parameters that we don't get parameters so much on time. Focus so much on time. Purpose of use, usage. Because when you look at that survey data, where teachers are using it, it is mostly for our adaptive programs, and some important whole group research. So I just worry when we start looking at time. Does that take away instructional practices that could be beneficial? So I just share that with you from a parameter standpoint. Could go beyond just time. Could go beyond just time level of discussion. With that level of discussion.
It would include. I think it would include.
Correct.
I think it would include time, and I think it would include time and or these Chromebooks.
And I would encourage our team to also share what parameters we already try to put in place. We're already aligned in many of these areas of concern, I believe.
Okay, so that's okay. So that cover that. Also, I would like to hear back. If we go with if we go with cart or a charging station, whatever they're called in second grade, what would that look like? What would that look like? The bulkiness, as far as the bulkiness, the ease of it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think the other thing we would do in that instance, Ms. Weems, is not just get caught up on cart. Is not just get caught up on cart. It is more or less, how will we charge? It is more or less, how will we charge?
How will we, how will we?
When we say cart, sometimes people just keep that big picture alternatives to just cart, alternatives to just carts. We've started some of that conversation.
Okay, good. How will we charge them?
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
You want to have an exemption for those students who have some type of adaptive software or skill. That should automatically be in it. That should automatically be in it. We've said 504 for IEP, but it could be ESL, it could be a student with a minor. Some predictive device, some simple things, some simple things. Some sort of if a student has a diagnostic, yeah, that needs to be, that needs to be. That should just automatically be exempted. Whatever needed for whatever that needs to be written. I mean, I think it needs to be written that that's exempted, but it needs to be written out clearly. But it needs to be written out clearly.
And I would say that might include that might have to go home with them. Might have to go home with them. Like some special ed students might need some of that. That's not hard to do, but we just should automatically exempt that. That's not hard to do, but we just should automatically exempt that from any of your time period.
Right, okay, I'm reading off my notes. Okay, my different colleagues.
I don't want it to be, I want the division to make sure that, I want to eliminate an educational tool or resource. I really wanted to go into deep dive find the focus points on these because all other divisions that I looked up are trying to move toward the one-on-one placement for their placement for, and I do not want our students and want our students and brought it up those that brought it up because of IEP, the 504s or any other determining learning deficit. And there are some students that the deficit might not be the parent too. I want to make sure that we understand that no two students receive education alike. We have to make sure that all of our students are getting that successful benefit of our standard education. I think that this will give us the necessary time how we can move forward, how we can rush into it because it's another component that I do not want to get into the weeds because of other things happening outside of the school. I know they just had U.S. Congress to come forward and people to come forward and to talk about these things, but those things that caught those students up were corporate handling, and the word just ran out of my head because I know when I go online, my algorithm, I might look something up, and the next thing I know, it's popping all up. This is what they're talking about. The students. There are a lot of things that we cannot control. Outside. But on the inside, I want to make sure that we do not eliminate an educational resource that's moving our students to being successful in what we're doing, being successful in what we're doing. And I do appreciate you all to give us because it'll give us time to understand how we can move on this, to understand how we can move on this.
I'd just like to say I appreciate the approach we're taking here to take a look at answers some questions from our perspective. We appreciate that level of attention we want to discuss. So thank you to the three of you for providing that opportunity.
And there are some things that the school board cannot do hand on as a superintendent in managing these things. I think the superintendent should have a big voice in this as well. I know we're his boss, but I think that we're handling things that we're talking about in the classroom. Mr. Bones still did a great job. I do the same thing when I go in and I talk to the teachers and the teachers and the principals. And I lack peer conversation. I like my peers to talk with me. Those that are hands-on, that are in the room, hands-on, that's in the room. and touching our students. In the place. And this is they're saying this is what we need, and this is how we like to go forward. This is how we like to go forward. School board member to hear to hear teachers to assess and to work along with my superintendent. Thank you so much, my superintendent. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, and it is difficult because, we'll get one email, we'll get one email from a teacher that says, I don't want them at all. They're inappropriate, I don't want them at all. The very next take them away because it's so important. Don't dare take them away. Then we get the survey that says they're only on them for 20 minutes away. They're only on them for 20 minutes away. I mean, so it's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to process. The reason why this came up because the reason why this came up because parents and teachers and parents and I think it's just and I think it's just global thing. The data is so overwhelming about how damaging screen time and learning on screens is not actually helping our students in their long-term gamification. I mean, we could go on and on. So that's why we're here. So that's because we have heard from our constituents about how much screen time kids are on it. So the data and the surveys are very helpful. And so I just want to make sure that I just want to make sure the truth out there and the fact out there. The truth out there and the fact out there. Because you're getting so many competing. I called some people last night after our meetings and one had children in our schools. And my child was on it and they clicked like my child was on it and they clicked like they're like 15-minute block within their like 15-minute block. What they were doing. I mean, that is just like one case. I mean, that is just like one case. And then we've got. So we're just trying to get the best information, and we're just trying to do what we think is best for what we think is best for our students and staff. We're here because of the dilemma. We're here because of the dilemma. Screen time and the youth. Screen time and all the mental health that comes wrapped around them. Of course, we can't control what goes on at home. We can't control what goes on at home within our buildings. And we did it for cell phones. And we did it for cell phones. So that's why we're here. But I just want to do it in the most transparent, fair way. So we're going to give y'all all this stuff, and then y'all all this stuff with us.
Mrs. Williams, I do know one of the concerns the school board member had is parental notification and opt-out and how much trouble would that be? I said I don't want my child using a computer or program. So somebody asked, could we get some information how difficult that would be? The other one that they had is it's possible to get at the end of the year, an annual update on how much screen time we're seeing by grade level. Those were other two other things were mentioned. Those were other two other things were mentioned.
That was brought up to me. That was in my notes. Is there any case would it be feasible for a parent? Say we decide to pre-K through first grade, but we do decide to keep them in second grade. Is there a feasibility for someone to opt out? So that would be something that you would come back with. How easy or hard that would be.
Ms. Williams, I feel like we're dialoguing.
Yes, we are.
One of my takeaways in listening last night, and I'm wondering if this would be of any benefit to this group or some others, is the statement around, well, they only use it for 24 minutes, so why do they can't they live without it? And so I thought to myself, from my coaching background, like, you took a 5-minute, most important part of my practice away would have a significant impact. Would it be beneficial at all to get any information that shows what can occur that they are finding a benefit in that short period of time that they're using? We talked often about Lexia, we talked often about the computer adaptive. I'm not certain how many people really understand the level of engagement that creates for our students in the classroom. Would that be something that you want for this group or some other method to say what is really happening in that time where teachers might say, I can't, this is where the disruption is going to lie? Am I making sense?
I would think that you would bring something like that.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you.
That sounds. I would definitely agree with that. Because like I said, we're not under time limit. I think the best thing is to make sure we get everything right, so to speak. And I just want to make sure that I'm no way in favor of limited Chromebooks or anything instructional. That was anyway portrayed. But I'm all for everything we can do to help our students. Like I said, we got the different programs that need the Chromebooks. I've been watching and I've talked to the students. And I mean, they love Lexia, they love the Magic Math. It's just great to see. Young children that have this enthusiasm to learn. The words were not that I'm a little jealous, but I am that we didn't have it when I went to school. But it's just really encouraging to see them focus on it. And I don't really think that they're even like the Chromebook usage is not even part of it. It's just a tool for them that makes it easier, and they can compete, and they the words against and see what they're doing on the screen and everything. So
The other thing I would share with that is that we'll talk through here to make sure, because that is used in K through 1. So we would want to also bring what are the alternatives that we would be able to share that complete some of that in a non-digital format. I don't want to give an indication that we're just not going to look at if the decision is made K through 1, for example. I think this group would want to know what are the non-computer instructional techniques you're going to use to address the lack of having Imagine Math or that. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm confused about yours. May I pause because this is really confusing. So you said you don't want to limit them. Are you talking about after second grade? Because you said that no Chromebooks pre-K through first grade, but now you just said you don't want to limit.
Well, I'm trying not to use the word limit, like I like parameters better, and whatever works. I mean, that's kind of be variable on how that.
But are you still for your original statement, no Chromebooks?
I'm not set stone on that.
I mean, if it's shown, because the way I look at it is we do have some parents. But when you do the numbers, like I've talked to the superintendent, you're looking at like usually less than 5% of the parents who voice an opinion, and we still have to go with the people who have the knowledge and so to speak, and listen to them. So I'm not totally opposed to the K through 1 if there's viable usage for it.
Yeah, so
just saying that.
So Ms. Wynn, that's why I asked that question. Because I know, to clarify for folks that are on the fence, like Mr. Bowenstiel is sounding at this point, like he's seeing the value of those programs. I'm sorry to speak for you, but seeing the value. But he also said, I don't want them in K through 1. So we need to make sure we're bringing for an informative group. If we took away K through 1 and Imagine Learning and Lexia was gone, what would the substitute look like? And how would teachers integrate that? How would we bring that forward for teachers that may have not received that level of training? So I'm paying attention to the conversation and ensuring.
Well, to do all the time.
Perhaps I spoke a little abruptly on having to definitely output my conversation with principals were that they could live without the K through 1.
That's right.
But second grade, they were like, please don't.
I like what you said, and what would it look like?
And that's a great point too. So
Yeah,
I'm
so to
open.
your point, Ms. Weems, I think that's,
Yeah, that would be part of the conversation.
yes. I just don't want it to come on our end as if we're just trying to ensure that we're not giving you all the information. I think it's really important to see what it can look like, because I think it'll be good for our team that also would say, yeah, if we went away from K through 1, I'm using that as the example, what training would be required for those teachers who are not used to it? How do we ensure small group instruction still takes place? So I appreciate you giving us some buffer time to get these conversations going. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I just want to make sure what your request was that there's information to answer some of
And then is there, or are there any mandatory requirements? Because I've heard both. Is it Lexia? That's the name of it, right? Like that a teacher has to, I don't know if they're called modules, or that each child has to do 3 Lexias a week. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Is there a requirement by the state or by us that you have to do that? That you have to use that for a certain amount of time?
To my knowledge, there's no requirement by the state, but we do recommend a certain time limit they would do per day. So 10 to 15 minutes in kindergarten on Lexia, which you can see from the data, most kindergartners aren't even meeting that, because you have to imagine they're doing Lexia and Imagine Math. One of the things we didn't mention last night too is there is another component of Lexia that I think is really important. It's called Apple Lessons. So there was a question last night and some conversation around like, what do we do with that, and then how are we informing our decisions, right? So with Lexia in particular, the students work on it independently for whatever time. So as an example, they might do every other day on Lexia versus Imagine Math on a rotating basis, right? Still not meeting the parameters we're setting, but they're getting on it. And then the teacher has access to that data and what we call the Apple lessons. So the teacher would then pull the Apple lessons, and that's how they use the data to guide and differentiate their instruction moving forward. So that's one of the key components of Lexia. And then Imagine Math has something similar, not called an Apple lesson, something similar where they're getting data to inform and make instructional decisions moving forward for those kids. And that's where that differentiation comes into play.
Okay. Mrs. Williams, just as a note, today in the General Assembly, Senate Bill 568, there was an amendment to 22.1206, and this title this is Instruction Concerning Drugs, Alcohol, Substance Abuse, Retail Tobacco Products, Hemp Products intended for smoking, gambling, and screen time. And the proposal is to add a Section D, instruction concerning time spent using electronic devices such as computers, cell phones, and other smart devices, and the addictive potential thereof shall be provided by the public school as prescribed by the board. So I don't know if we might be looking at something coming out next year. I don't know how fast this new administration, it looks like they're directing them to look at this issue. So there's a possibility next year the Virginia Department of Education may provide you some more details on it, but with the new administration, I don't know how fast that would happen if this all goes through.
Okay.
It's Senate Bill 568. It looks like they're asking the study to provide guidance. So unfortunately, what we tend to see with the Virginia Department of Education is shortly before school starts, here's guidance. You've got to figure out how to implement it. So there's a possibility the Virginia Department of Education may also give you some guidance on that coming out next year.
I would think, yeah. And that doesn't surprise me because all the overwhelming data that says, and that's why my next question was, do we also want to go into middle and high school? Because I think at something the other day, not the other day, the other month, when we had, y'all did a presentation about screen time, and I think at one point it was like 3 to 4 hours at one level. And so I remember thinking, well, to me that's too much at any level in school because you're only in content area for like 4 hours. So do you, my colleagues to the right and left, do you want them to come back with information about middle and high, or do we want to just stick to elementary? I mean, you can't have two different policies, one for elementary, one secondary, or can we?
You can, but I think that's a lot to bite off at one time, take them in small chunks, because that's.
Okay, so do we want to just stick with elementary for now?
I do.
My proposal was just to stick with the elementary for now and just to,
Okay, and then maybe we will get direction for later, like you said, through that.
Yeah, I would imagine that's going to require a lot more studying to get the different grades and the type of classes they have, so I don't.
Because we do have things like Virginia Beach Digital Campus, you do have some virtual Virginia, and that's middle and high. And then I do also just want to touch back, because I thought last night was the first time we provided real good clarity on what the data actually means, the light speed in terms of what is considered screen time versus, because remember in the summers, like if I'm toggling, does that make it? If I'm typing, and so we gave some conflicting information on that I think last night Dr. Goldberg really clarified that if it's open and on and awake, not at rest, then that's dialogue and screen time. So right now mine is hitting screen time even though I'm speaking to you guys and I haven't engaged in it in 30 minutes. So that's the challenge on the secondary level where the Canvas course is there, where the curriculum lies, where a lot of the quick formative assessments lie. But I'm always, to your point, I always look at the qualitative side of it. How often when I'm going into a middle school am I seeing them just on the device versus doing things in Avid? How are they communicating with one another? So I think that would take a deeper study. But I just wanted to bring back that data that she spoke about last night on light speed and what does mean screen time.
Yeah, and on the flip side of, if we take away the Chromebooks pre-K through first, what would it look like? And then on that flip side, though, what would they be getting? Which some parents and some students and some teachers think a pencil to paper is a lot better, or instruction with that teacher where I'm looking at that teacher is a lot better. So kind of both. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's the other key component. I appreciate you letting me talk, Ms. Williams. I think one of the things in communicating with our families is them getting a firm grasp of what their child's day looks like. Because, sometimes when I hear the discussion, it's like, it's either this or that. It's either they get hands-on or they're on a computer. And we would say they're getting the full educational experience, that they are writing, they are reading, they are engaged in hands-on. We do a lot around science in terms of that component. If you look at the work in social studies, it's very much around writing and project-based learning, or not performance-based learning and assessments. So I think that's another key component that I feel like people are hearing this screen time versus this and acting like one is dominating over the other. And we just don't see it that way, and I think there just needs to be some dialogue on, to your point, I'm a big believer in play as well. But there's we do recess every day, and that is free play in many instances. And so I think there's a lot of confusion to a degree of what a child's day looked like. And you saw some of that in the survey results from some parents who did not know how the device was being used.
That did not surprise me. In fact, I was surprised that parents knew, because if you ask your first grader, their perception of time.
Oh, I wouldn't have known for sure. I'd have been on that other side.
One first grader could say, "Yeah, we're never on it," and then the next first grader say, "Oh, we're on it all the time." I mean, first grader's perception is a first grader's perception. Okay, so back to the annual feedback of screen time. I don't know if that would go in this policy, but I want to note that because that was also brought up to me as well. And then you have the opt-out. Okay, Ms. Linetti, can you just kind of reread our points?
I'm gonna try. I think first is what would it look like not allowing pre-K to, I think first was,
First grade and second grade.
first and second grade, pre-K. Then what about third to fifth grade, not going home? You would need more information about that. What would happen if you had no devices being allowed to use at all pre-K through 1? What would be the impact of that? How would it affect second grade not having devices or using devices? Or would there be some parameters around second to fifth grade involving screen time or what the purpose that they were using it for? Some discussion how you would use charts or cart charging, and it may not just be a cart, but something about what is the impact you would have to do to be able to charge and store those devices, I'm assuming what you're talking about. We would need some kind of clause for those adaptive uses to exempt them from it, possibly diagnostic uses exempting from that. Would it be possible to have an annual report on screen time broken down by grades? And would it be feasible to implement an opt-out form for parents who did not want their students to use devices? So that's a lot of different topics, but that's what I have written down.
Good luck.
So we have those topics, and obviously this is not the only thing on your agenda for policies, and it's, as you know, is there a time, are we looking at when you agenda plan for policy review to say, here's the first few we want to have answered? Or are you looking for one big scope presentation on this? You had mentioned earlier, Ms. Weems, that this could be spread out over time, and we're directing staff to do some of these things and bring it back.
Yeah, I think obviously we would not do anything this school year, but I think definitely our goal should be to shoot for the 20th in September or August. And so we've got March, April, May, June, July. Our next meeting is quicker than usual because we had to postpone to April. So our next meeting, actually the 25th, that's in 3 weeks. And then after that, we would meet in April. I would think, do you think it's feasible for your group to have this back and some of it back in March and some in April? So that gives you 3, that gives you
You're talking for PRC, correct?
Yeah, just to PRC.
Yeah, I think that's feasible.
So that gives you 7 weeks.
Yeah, we could draft you the exemption, the exact, what the language would look like to exempt those that need it for that. That's easy.
My only request would be if you wanted to prioritize which were the ones you wanted at a certain time, but I don't think, unless you want us to do that, if we want to and then we can, I don't think there's any problem with getting that done by May based on the questions.
Okay, so I think some brought back to the PRC our March 25th, and then some brought back to the April meeting.
I'm in favor of that.
Let me see when the April meeting is.
Did we schedule?
I do recommend that the Chair of Weems, that they build the foundation of how this should be laid out and plan to give it to us in increments. I think you should have that.
Yeah, that's fine. So we have April 22nd, and then we have the March 25th. So if y'all could just, yeah, whatever you think as far as priority and as far as your time, and then work with Cammie, and Cammie can help, like she said, with a lot of the stuff.
So Kim, how do you think that moving on Senate Bill 568, you think that'll be a slow move?
I think that just goes to VDOE and like come back and provide some guidance. So I don't even think we would see that guidance till right before school started. So at that point, we would be able to, I don't even think you could implement any of this for the next school year anyway. So we could adjust if they're giving different parameters. I don't know. Again, this administration's pretty young, so I don't know how fast they'll turn stuff out. But I'm guessing you won't have anything definitive from them for a while, so you may have to set the field. I do know that there are at least 5 other states looking at this. I can't find good policies right now for anything on this. I think this is a fairly new issue, a lot of people are looking at, so I think you're taking some time to really study it. It's probably a good idea until we get some guidance.
And I'd just like to say too, piggyback on Chair, we really found another terminology, piggyback. That speaking with some of the parents and speaking with some of the my colleagues concerning this, they felt that starting with K through 1, it would give us some ramifications of where we're going to go, how it would look. How the parents, especially the parents, another thing that I'm concerned about, educating the parents where we're going with this and what's happening. I want to make sure they get a lot of input, conversation about this as well. Might not mean much to many, but to some of them it's very important in knowing where we're going. So educating the parents, number one, would be the main thing. So did we do a survey with the parents? Have we done a survey with the parents lately? Okay.
Yes, we did.
Yes, ma'am. So included in the materials from last night's meeting was the teacher results that showed that our staff heavily favored keeping the Chromebooks, and then several slides in was the results of the parents, and it was almost a total flip where the parents said just the opposite. And so, yes, ma'am, it's in those handouts from last night's meeting.
And you're right. I just want to make sure that the public hearing us tonight understand that we did that. Did we get and trying to think, I was looking at did we get a great response from the parents in that survey?
We had several thousand, I think was the number that was read, 13% of our parents. But to your question, Ms. Felton, I think as we're talking about discussions that we did not have in that survey around our 3rd through 5th graders, when we're starting to talk about limiting bringing home in 3rd through 5th, I would be interested if any like 4th or 5th grade parents said, that's where I connect with what my kid's doing. And they show me what they're learning through their Chromebook. So I think there is an element to, again, to Ms. Weems' point about we're not in a rush here. And I'm not saying September is a rush. I think we're given a good amount of time. But I think that is information we want to know. As a parent, I know I would sit down, like, open it up and show me what you're doing with it so I can get a real good feel if you're even processing what your teacher's asking you to do in school. So I think that's a group we did not have in this initial component.
Just want to, you said how many parents, I'm sorry, 13% parents and what, 84%?
Like 81%, it was high, yes.
81% of staff.
Okay. Thank you. It's of the staff, but I didn't see the parents.
Okay, all right, so it's an agreement that we will bring this back to PRC, the next 2 PRC meetings, all right? Okay. And then lastly, the policy 6-41, digital literacy.
I think we brought this up because it would be similar to the last policy. Either one of these would be where we put it.
Yeah, and this is basically how we teach the safety and how to operate the computer and, yeah.
If you recall, Ms. Weems, this was just updated with AI, and I believe maybe the computer science standards were added into that policy in
When was,
September.
yeah, that was just recently. Yeah, Cammie just attach this because it kind of goes with what we were talking about, but I don't see any changes that need to be made. It was just kind of there for us to see. Do you see any concerns or changes? Okay, so we don't need to take this any
I just
further.
want to ask, and just to be clear, is this one of the executive orders that came through from Governor Youngkin concerning AI? Is this one of?
I think the digital literacy, this one we're looking at, had to do with the federal orders having to start incorporating standards of AI in. That's sort of why we were looking at updating it, which is somewhat different than what you're looking at screen times. You know,
Yes.
there is required instruction on AI that's come out, and that came from the federal order, that came to the state order. So that's a different concept than what you're talking about, the amount of time a student is on a computer.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, and then Mr. Bowensteel and Ms. Felton, if you have any other questions or concerns about what we've spoken about, if you could just get those to me, and then I would pass them forward, but I think we pretty much covered everything, a lot of details. So that was good work. I want to thank everybody for coming.
Ms. Weems, one more thing, and it's not on screen time. Going back to policy 3-1, I reached out to our financial team, and they actually said it's not illegal to have cash funds. It's not something that is promoted, and that's one of the reasons why we don't have it in our schools. I asked our CFO, Ms. Pate, if that was language we needed to keep, and she said yes. She said that was a catch-all in case there's ever an emergency situation where the superintendent needed to authorize a quick, whether it be payment or cash for something, and that her preference would be that that language stays, with the hopes that it never has to be used, but it is not illegal to have cash funds. It's just not something that's permitted in the schools, and this, the way it's written, she said it's only the superintendent if he authorizes or she authorizes. So I just wanted to share that information, and they are prepared to attend the next meeting if the chair and the rest of the board deems they need to.
Okay, so if the superintendent authorizes a cash fund to be in the superintendent's, or if he authorizes it.
You can authorize anywhere, it's his discretion.
Yeah, that's
So it's a catch-all
interesting.
bullet in case. Because the reason why I asked, it came up because I saw the superintendent's authorization, but then again, I remember when our policies, they spoke about fundings and raising monies in school and where they go, how do we keep account of it, because we had some, it was some,
Watch this, absolutely, and as I indicated, they are willing to attend the next
Let's
meeting.
just have them back.
And I do have them looking to see if there ever was a time in which we had to. My first thoughts were back in the day before, you had the P cards and the credit cards. I mean, I remember we had kids stranded, at an event, and you had to, quickly assess some things. But I'm not for sure we have those situations any longer. So they're doing some homework to see if that has ever occurred.
Perfect. All right, so they will be back next week. So we'll just
Mrs.
keep
Weems,
that.
I did get a somewhat unusual request. Your Department of Technology has been working with your risk management office on the new fee structure for rental facilities. And you've heard that we've talked about this before, is we now have an online system for facility use permits. One of the things I realized looking at is that we have not updated that fee schedule in a very long time. They would like to update the fee schedule. It would not require that we fix the policy on 755, which we're not quite up at the 5-year point to look at that. However, there's a fee schedule the board has to adopt, because you have to adopt, the policy requires to do this. They're proposing the fee schedule. The question was, do we want to bring that to PRC to look at ahead of time, or do you want us to take it straight to school board? We don't think we need to do the policy, otherwise we just take the fee schedule directly to the
Yeah,
school board.
I don't think that's, if we're not changing policy, I don't think that belongs here.
Okay, so we'll have that for agenda planning then, or when the final schedule's
Just
ready.
bring it to Chair Brown, and that should be brought up.
So, Ms. Weaver, just one thing I missed in Appendix C, small. I just want to get a definition of it. In Appendix C2, where it said quorum under A, Could you determine or define who the ex officio members would be? Who would that be?
It's usually defined on the committee itself, who's an ex officio member. Different than other organizations, we rarely have ex officios as voting members. They're more like a consultant role on there. Occasionally, you will have some of our adjunct ad hoc committees have designated some of the ex officios to have voting ability, but it's pretty rare on like a school board committee with the three of you, we wouldn't give you an ex officio member to be on there to vote.
No, it's just that you mentioned in the quorum, and the reason I was asking that just the definition of who would be a ex officio member, not the voting rights. Who would that be? Would it be you? Ex officio?
No, it's more likely like a prior chair. Sometimes we look for quorum as who votes. That's going to be your quorum on there. That establishes your quorum. So that will depend on the committee, and that's just going to depend on how many people are designated on the committee. There are some committees like I think BUC is an example of one where you do have like the demographers on, and some of the facilities people are on there. So that it's just going to be the committee constitution will determine who's ex officio versus voting.
Okay.
All right, any more comments? All right, well then our next meeting is March 25th. I have it 3:30. I said there must have been something earlier. Okay, so March 25th at 3:30. So we are adjourning this meeting at 3:18. Thank you, everybody.